A girl never did her homework, but during art class, she went through 50 pencils writing non-stop. The teacher, puzzled, rushed over to check on her and discovered that the girl had filled the paper with numbers. The teacher reminded her it wasn't math class, but this only made the girl write more frantically. Left with no choice, the teacher forcibly took the paper away. Yet the girl, coming back to her senses, wasn't angry. She just quietly walked out of the classroom and stared blankly at the sun, ignoring even the teacher's calls. It wasn't until the school's anniversary, when the art class projects were stored underground, that Linda, watching from outside, grew increasingly uneasy. By the time the teacher turned around to check on her again, Linda was gone. Sure enough, she had disappeared. The school organized a search party. Just then, the teacher heard a noise coming from the school basement. Opening the door, she saw Linda slumped on the ground, her hands covered in blood. Instinctively, the teacher looked toward the door panel. As it turned out, Linda had been trying to finish writing the numbers that were interrupted earlier. She kept repeating the words, "Stop," over and over. Fast forward 50 years later, the school, as agreed, took out the students' artwork. The elderly principal began distributing the letters. Some people saw rocket ship designs, while others saw imaginings of future technology. But when a little boy named Keller opened his, it was a paper densely filled with numbers. After going home, he showed it to his father, John, who had a keen sense for numbers. John decided to investigate. He wrote out a set of numbers on a board and tried to find patterns by dividing them up, but a random stroke seemed to have no effect. He tried a few more times until a date-like sequence emerged. Intrigued, John searched online and discovered it matched the date of the September 11th attacks. Even more eerie, the number 2996 was the exact death toll. Now fascinated, John wrote out all the numbers from the paper onto a whiteboard and looked each one up on his computer. Incredibly, every major disaster that had occurred in the past few decades corresponded to numbers on that paper. In other words, the person who wrote this letter had successfully predicted the dates of all future catastrophes. However, there were still some numbers after the death tolls that John hadn't figured out yet. First thing the next morning, John found his colleague and told him about this, saying a disaster would occur in 2 days with 81 fatalities. He hoped his colleague could help analyze the data to pinpoint the location and take preemptive measures. But upon hearing this, the colleague thought John must be losing his mind. So John had no choice but to return home and closely monitor the news. The date written on the paper came and went, but even after a full day, no major accidents were reported on TV. It also happened to be raining that day. John was about to go pick up his son from school when he noticed the longitude and latitude coordinates on his car's GPS. It suddenly hit him, those extra numbers on the paper. He quickly took it out and compared them carefully. Sure enough, the remaining digits were the coordinates of landmarks. Unfortunately, the location predicted for today's disaster was right in this area. By now, there was a major traffic jam up ahead. John hurried over to ask a police officer about it. But as soon as he started inquiring, before even getting an answer, the officer's face suddenly turned pale with fright. The officer then turned and fled.